check. 1, 2, mic check. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. Check, check, check. Check. How very, very odd. See, look. A threat hit.
All right, we're going to get started. I don't want to waste any more of your time. Like, I know you guys have things to do, so I'll give everyone a minute. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending today's forum, both to those of you here in the audience and to those of you joining us from the World Wide Web, brought to you by Spinnaker Media. I'm Thomas Beecham. I'm your student body president, and today we're going to have the chance to talk with Dr. John Flores, who is one of the 4 candidates for the next president of UNF. Just to give a little formatting for how these forums run, the first 10 minutes or so will be taken up by the candidate, and they will have a chance to talk to you about themselves. They will talk to you about their vision or their experience, whatever it is that they feel that is very important for you to know about them as a candidate. After that 10-minute period is up, then we will have a Q&A period. And that period, if you have any questions you want to ask the candidate, you can come up to the microphone, introduce yourself to the candidate so they know what your name is, and ask whatever questions you feel you or the students want answers to. And don't feel pressured if you don't have any questions to come up with something. If you just want to listen, that's fine too. And around 5:10, we will wrap up the forum with any final questions or concluding remarks that the candidate would like to make. And I ask that all the candidates, they try to limit their responses in case there are a lot of questions that want to be asked. That way we get the most out of this forum. So with that, please join me in a round of applause for our second candidate of the week, Dr. John Flores.
Thank you. Thank you. I thought I had it on, but it wasn't on. So first of all, let me thank the board and the committee for inviting me here. It's a great, not a great day, but it's a great time to come to Florida. I want to take a few minutes to say a few things about who I am and why I'm here, and a few principles that I believe strongly in. And then I'm going to turn it to you and try to answer the questions you have. So let me start with a little bit of a personal note. You may not know exactly who I am, but right now I'm dean at K-State, Kansas State University. I'm also a director of a large organization that's called K-State Research and Extension that has a lot of different activities in 5 different colleges: engineering, arts and sciences, human ecology, agriculture, and vet med. We have a lot of people that work in all those 5 colleges, about 350 faculty, as well as about 1,500 to 1,600 in total faculty and staff. The size of the college is about 3,400, about 2,700 or so are undergraduate students, about 600 or so are graduate students. We've done a lot of really good things at K-State that basically have put him in a position to compete for this job as president, and I can talk more about this as you like. But before K-State, I was department head for 12 years at Penn State, a department that was fairly small when I got there, but we grew in terms of students, and we grew in terms of research. We grew a lot of other activities as well. So by the time I left, it was 3 to 4 times what I found when I got there, both in terms of students as well as in terms of research activity and enterprise. Before that, I was on the faculty at Purdue University. That's where I did my faculty time. I went through the ranks. I get tenure and promotion. That's where I taught. That's where I did my research. This is where I grew up as an academic. But what I wanted to basically tell you is that education has been part of my life obviously for a long time, from early on all the way to today. That love for education, it was instilled in me by grandparents and parents, and then teachers and mentors and a lot of other people, a lot of other individuals. And all the way to today, where my wife still tells me that, you know, I wake him up to go to school every day, so I still go to school. I'm an academic at heart, and I really like to be in a university, primarily because of the students, but not only because of the students. But without students, we wouldn't have a university, and without education, we wouldn't have advancement in society. So I believe in both of those things, education and students and advancement, and that's the reason I have stayed in academia. That's the reason I have maintained hard work and passion for what I do. Now let me tell you a quick story because I think it's really important for you to understand where I'm coming from. So maybe some of you have heard the story before. I actually told the story in another group because it came up. But the story is about Michelangelo, you know, the great artist and sculptor, and Giovanni, a little kid that was about 5 or 6 years old. So every day Giovanni will go after school to visit Michelangelo and watch him work. So he will go into his studio and he'll sit somewhere and he'll start watching Michelangelo, and they'll talk as the artist worked. And time went by, and a day in and a day out, Giovanni did the same thing. So after some time, months, whatever it took, one day Giovanni walks into his studio right after school, sees the whole thing, you know, the big part of marble that started with, now is all covered up. And so he looks around and he says, "What happened? What's all this about?" And Michelangelo says, "Well, you know, come and see." So he pulls the veil, and Giovanni looks at this. He says, this is David, by the way, Michelangelo and David. And Giovanni looks at David. He says, "How did you know he was in there?" Well, the issue is that this is what teaching and education is all about. A teacher creates the best in you. And I truly believe in teaching. I truly believe in education. I believe in training. And if we didn't have universities like UNF, like K-State, where I come from, we wouldn't be as advanced of a society as we are. We wouldn't have the standard of living we have today. If we didn't have the science, the technology, the engineering, if we didn't have the humanities, the arts, all the things that comprises a university, we wouldn't be who we are today. Now, having said that, one of the things that's extremely important to me, and I know it's extremely important to you as students, is how do you really gauge somebody has learned well and is now ready to face the world, is now ready to go out there and be a productive citizen and do a job or follow a profession or whatever the case might be, particularly since a lot of changes are taking place. If you look at our society and how we have changed, you today as students are very different than the students we had in a university like this 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So we as a university, we as teachers, we as a system, we have to change to accommodate that. What do I mean by that? There was a survey that was run a couple of years ago, I think, that found out that the students of today, you, as you graduate, you will have to change professions 7 times in your life. Not jobs, professions. So training somebody to change professions 7 times in 35 to 40 years, whatever your working life might be, that's a very, very big challenge. And to figure this out and to educate you well, to get you to the point where you get to be productive and successful, it's not an easy thing. And this is what really drives me every day. I get up because I really feel the need to help the next generation of leaders get educated, to help our society get better. That's my ideal. Now, I'll say a few more things and then I'm going to try to turn it over to you. But the other part of my personality is that I didn't grow up one day wanting to be a university president. Now, there's a lot of people that actually have this in mind very early on. That's not me. I didn't want to be an administrator. I didn't want to be a department head. I didn't want to be a dean. I didn't want to be a president. But I was sort of guided, mentored, advised, pushed into any of those jobs. And actually, as I say this, one of the things that comes to mind is I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, the company ran a survey of students, college students. They had about 40 some, maybe 50 different professions, and they asked the students to pick professions that they're interested in and would like to be part of. There was one profession with 0 votes out of thousands of students. One profession with 0 votes. Do you know which one that is? University president. Nobody wanted to be a university president. So I'm not different in that respect. I didn't grow up wanting to be a university president. I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a faculty. I wanted to be together with students. But because life is what it is and takes you in different directions, I changed professions. I am now an administrator, and I'm trying to be a president because I think I can lead this university to better and better days. So this is a great university. It's a regional urban university, but I think it has a lot of really good things ahead of it. And I will be thrilled and happy to come here and work with you to make this a better place. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to you for questions, and hopefully we'll have a good conversation.
All right, so if there are anyone with questions, you can please come up and line up to the microphone over here. And I ask again that you introduce yourself to the candidate. Yeah, you can go ahead and go first.
Hi, my name is Luis Poisson. I'm a graduate student here at UNF, and I've been here since my freshman year in the summer, so it's been about half a decade that I've spent now at UNF. So my question pertains to the new and emerging field of esports is taking storm across the country, and it's valued to be a $2 billion industry in the next 2 years, while online gaming is valued at over $30 billion. Several universities are expanding onto the esports realm since they see the value and exposure for their universities through collegiate competition on these online games. Are you interested in this emerging field, or foresee yourself creating new departments within UNF while you are in an office?
So, excuse me, but I missed the first part. I didn't quite hear the first part. What was the industry you're talking about?
Esports, so like competitive online gaming and whatnot.
Okay, yeah. So your question is, would I, as president, would I want to create new programs in that area?
Not specifically, it could be in that area, just other departments in general. Do you foresee yourself creating any new departments while you're in an office?
So, I'm going to take this as a bigger question than this very, very specific, because there's a lot of changes happening in the world that most of us don't really understand right now until it goes by and we look back and say, that's what was happening. The type of change and the type of future that you're going to find ahead of you, it's going to be very different than what we have today. It's going to be very different in terms of computing. It's going to be very different in terms of data. It's going to be very different in terms of health and food and you name it, right? So there's no question in my mind that we will have to evolve as a university to address and accommodate those kinds of needs. Be that gaming and computing related issues all the way to drones and transportation, a lot of other things. But at the same time, we can't lose sight that universities have been around for a long time. If you look back 500 years in 15th, 16th century England, where higher education notion was really sort of put together and created for the first time, only 3 of those institutions remain today: the Queen, the church, and the university. And they remain because they have a value. And the universities have changed quite a bit, but they have also remained the same in many principles. We're not necessarily here to create new things all the time. We're here to educate people. We're here to train people how to think. We're here to train people how to figure out things on their own, how to learn by themselves. And a lot of times, that's the basics for really good education. The training into specialized areas can come and be part of that. But we really need to fulfill that base first. So I'm not against looking at new opportunities, but at the same time, we need to be very careful how we make those decisions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sheila Brown. I'm a graduate student here at UNF, and my program is Higher Education Administration. This is my last year, hopefully. My question to you, well, since you said that you're interested in education, education is very important to you, and training educators to ultimately help the communities. What do you see, just from your research at UNF, do you see that we need to strengthen, or is it a weakness, or what do you see that we need to strengthen to help change our process and how we train our educators? And also, do you see yourself working with secondary education to kind of link with the university?
Yes, thank you for that question. Actually, as part of my college, we actually train teachers for ag education throughout the state. So we do have part of the college being actually education. So what I see as the broader picture, in order to help students learn better, in order to help prepare students better for the workforce, I think we have to really provide to them opportunities for internships, opportunities to be exposed to the real world, opportunities to work in an environment where they will work later on and get feedback and learn from that exercise. So those are some of the things that I would like to see. A lot of activities that pertain to your profession, a lot of activities that pertain to you learning with hands-on experience. Be that, putting you in a school or in a hospital or in an industry of whatever, in a laboratory. I also happen to think that as we grow our ability to produce new knowledge, to understand, in your case, how do kids learn better, for example, that will also help us educate the students better. So the connection between teaching and research, it's, in my mind, very, very important. Because the more research we do and we understand better, the better we will be able to educate the next generation. The other thing that I wanted to say is that quality of faculty is extremely important. And you have a lot of really good faculty here. But in my mind, always, and even now as dean and director, or before as department head, and hopefully soon as president, there's no question in my mind that this is something that's extremely important to the quality of education, the quality of the institution, quality of faculty. How can we attract quality faculty, and how can we keep them here? Because retention of faculty is an extremely important aspect. So the other component I wanted to add to that, we talked about all the things that we can do with the students, we talked about the faculty. I think the other part that I wanted to mention is there are processes that we can put in place, and you may have some of that here. There are systems we can put in place to improve our ability to educate students better, to improve the students' ability to learn better. And you may have some of those processes or you may not, but this is something else that I would look into it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this event. My name is Moshe, I'm a graduate student. And I was wondering, what is your view about the role of college athletics in universities?
I'm sorry,
or the role of college athletics, college sports at universities. For example, the university doesn't have a football team, but sometimes university presidents believe that sometimes a football team is kind of a magical solution, but it's not always like that because there are a lot of costs associated. So if you can answer the question in that context.
Yeah, sure. Well, let me start with the broader picture of athletics first, and then I'll come to football. So I think athletics in this country and in the context of higher education in the U.S., it's extremely important. I think it's extremely important for a university to have strong athletics programs. There's a lot of reasons, and I try to make that clear to other groups as well, but for example, athletics gives you an opportunity to bring a lot of people together. You know, imagine how many people you bring together in basketball games or baseball games or whatever. It gives you an opportunity to provide messaging and give messages to that group that you wouldn't be able to do it otherwise. It also gives you an opportunity to recruit students, and in many cases, better students, if you had strong athletic programs, for example. It also, you know, comes together with, you know, my belief that, you know, healthy body, healthy mind go hand in hand. I mean, we need to exercise our minds, we need to educate our minds, but we also need to take care of our bodies as best as we can. So athletics goes hand in hand with that, provides the facilities for all students to get better. Now, I'll come to the football in just a minute, but having said that athletics is an important component of an academic institution, that does not mean that athletics is going to be the most important component of the institution. It will be an important component, but it will not be the one that drives the institution. In my mind, we're here to educate people, to innovate, to do research, and to outreach all of our efforts to improve the communities, to improve industry, to drive economic development, to do a lot of things all around us, and athletics can be part of that, but it's not going to drive that. So, yes, it's important, but it's part of an academic institution, and we can't forget that. Now, football, because a lot of people talk to me about that, a lot of people ask questions already. There is no question in my mind that having a football team, it's an important to an institution. But you better have a really good football team, because if you don't, it's not going to be a positive thing. Now, the other part of that equation is that football is both an expensive way to do athletics, and it can also pay big time if you have it and it works well. There's no football team here, at least I was told that. I know that's the case. I don't know what the sentiment is, if we want a football team or if we don't want a football team. If the students want it, if the university wants it, I'm not exactly sure about it. What I understand, though, is that the performance of athletes is important to this institution. Performance of students is important to this institution, but particularly athletes is one of the metrics I believe that it's part of the state system. So if we were to change and bring a football team in, which will be quite a few athletes, it may change some of those metrics. So we need to understand a lot of things before we make that decision. This is not something that, you know, your next president is going to make lightly, and it's not something he or she will make alone. It will need a lot of input from other places.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is John Biasati, and I wanted to know, what are the two main issues you think UNF needs to tackle right away?
The two main
two main issues you would tackle right away?
If I were the president?
Yes, sir.
Two main issues. You know, there's a lot of different things I think that we can tackle. I think one of the issues that we need to figure out how to do better is how do we improve our metrics compared to what we have done in the past and where we are, because it is the system constraints. If we don't do well in terms of metrics, we're not going to get the funds and the resources we need to improve as an institution. So to me, metrics are very, very important. So one of my first priorities will be to really look at metrics and how we can improve towards those metrics. The second thing that I would like to look at, it would be the morale of the people. I now have gone through 2 days of meetings. I didn't know that coming in, but I'm sensing that now. I think the morale of staff and faculty and maybe students, and did we lose the sound? I think we lost the sound. The morale of the people, I think, needs to maybe improved to a certain extent. So those are two things that I will look into right away. Now, there are a lot of smaller things. Actually, one of the questions I've been asking the groups is, what is the one thing that you want me to do right away, and what's the one thing you want me to leave alone? So I've already gotten some suggestions. The one thing that I would do, though, as president, I will have an open and honest conversation with the community, the students, the faculty, the staff, maybe outside people as well. What exactly are those two things you want me to do?
I think it's a bigger question than I can answer.
Okay. All right. Well, be prepared.
Hi, to reintroduce myself again, it's Luis Poisson. I'm a graduate student here at UNF. So over the years, I've had the privilege to do research with my professors and attend several undergraduate research conferences throughout the entire state through UNF. And so my question is that whenever I went to these conferences, I saw that UNF actually had the most students that attended these conferences, and you know, FSU and UF and UCF have way more funding than UNF does, but we still had more students participating in research than they do at those institutions that have a lot more money. So I'm curious as to whether you see UNF in the future taking more of a research route or still continue the academic route. But my worry is if we do go to like a research route, will we lose the privilege of being able to work with professors one-on-one? Because I do think that since the classroom sizes are so small here, we're able to have like a much different experience than a lot of universities have. For example, if I went to UCF, I wouldn't be able to speak to my professors very freely. I have to speak to a TA because there's just too many students. So I'm just curious as what do you think is the direction of the university and like those concerns that I have?
Yeah, so you had several questions there, and I'm going to try to get to all of them. Let me start with the last question that you had. You know, what do I believe about growth and how that may affect the quality of the teaching and the learning and the experience that the student has right now? What I can tell you is that, you know, I've been part of growth for many years now, both at the department at Penn State and now at Kansas State. We've grown in terms of student numbers, we've grown in terms of research activity, and both of those had almost exactly the opposite effect what you would expect. Our faculty were more closely connected to the students. Our students had a much better education than before. Our stakeholders, the people that hire our students or use our innovation and research, they were much more attuned to what we're doing now because they figured out, and I'll explain why. We need to go back for just a minute. If you are an educational institution that all you do is you take knowledge from the shelf and provide it to the students, and you don't create new knowledge yourself, if your professor is not a researcher, the ability to convey knowledge and to teach is different. I understand what it means to be a good teacher. I understand what it means to be a good researcher. But what I'm trying to say is if you have research, will help you teach students better. Partly because you can involve them in that research, partly because those research professors will be in the classroom doing the teaching as well, partly because the students' curiosity will pick because of that research. So when at Penn State we moved from X to 3 to 4 times the students, the concern, what you articulated, was there. You know, will we lose the ability to provide quality education? Will we lose the ability to have students directly working with faculty? And the answer to that is no, we didn't lose that. We did have slightly bigger classes, but we didn't lose that ability. What we gained, on the other hand, is a group of graduate students that came in and they were rubbing shoulder with our undergraduate students, and they became mentors, and they became advisors, and they became role models, and we became a community of scholars that learn from each other, where before that wasn't the case. So I think research can help teaching. That was at Penn State. Now at Penn State, now at K-State, when I walked in as dean and I articulated a vision that had higher research activity, again, the concern was, but this is a teaching institution. We can't lose our ability to do quality educating and quality learning of our students. And again, if you move forward 5, 6 years, what you will see is that we didn't lose that. We're still a very good teaching and learning institution and college. Now we're doing a lot more research. Now our students have more opportunity to do things hands-on, in a lab, in an experimental field, in industry out there, because our faculty are better connected with that industry, where before there weren't. So I don't think increased student numbers and increased research, it goes against quality. As a matter of fact, in some cases, I think it helps quality, and it will help us become better.
Thank you.
Hi, so I'm John again. If you look around, you can see there aren't a lot of people here. What would you do to maybe help students want to be more involved with on-campus happenings?
Well, I just told the group back there, put some pizza on the table, so food always helps, but you know, I'm being facetious. There's quite a few things we can do. I think there are issues that students really care about. So if you get your finger on that pulse, what is it that the student body wants? What is it that the students really want? And you start addressing some of those issues, I think more and more students will show up. For example, it just happened just before the holidays. We had a few incidents about on our campus that pertain to diversity and inclusion and other things. And a couple of the students came to see me and they said, you know, we need to do something about this. My question to them is this something that the students truly care about? I knew the answer, but I wanted to make sure. And they said, yes, absolutely. I said, okay, can you organize that? Not me as the dean, not us as, you know, the president, the administration, whatever, but can you as students organize it? We'll help, we'll provide, we'll do whatever we need to do, but you organize that. They organized it. And it was really to discuss diversity and inclusion. Now, there was an auditorium or an amphitheater a little bigger than this. It would hold about 200 plus people. I didn't expect to see more than 20 or 30 people there. By the time I got there, just before we started, it was standing room only. And we didn't have food. Why? Because students really cared about that issue. They wanted to voice their concern. They wanted to be heard. They wanted to participate, to be part of that solution. And that's what that was. So what was there another part in your question?
That was it, no.
Okay, thank you.
Moshe again. How visible do you plan to be on campus? Are you planning to go to basketball games, show up at moving day, take walks around campus and say hi? Like, what is your philosophy about the visibility of the president?
As visible as I can be, and I'm not necessarily an energizer bunny, but I have a lot of energy and I run around all the time. However, the job of a president, it's not always internal. It's a lot of external responsibility. It's working with the communities, it's working with legislature, it's working with the private sector, it's working with donors. There's a lot of things out there that the president needs to do for the well-being of the university. However, there's no question in my mind that, at least at the beginning, I have to spend a lot of time internally. I have to visit with faculty, with staff, with students, to figure out the culture, to understand where you guys are coming from, to hear your concerns, to hear your issues, to figure out how we can collectively create a vision that it's our vision, not mine, our vision. And so at the beginning, I intend to spend a lot of time internally. But eventually, I have to be out there. So how much time can I spend running around the campus as much as I can. And I would love to spend more time with students. As I said before, I went into academia because I wanted to be part of this teaching and learning exercise. I love to be with students. When I had a research program, I loved my graduate students. You know, we'll go out and have fun, and you know, they'll be in my house all the time. Our undergraduate students will come into my lab and work all the time. This is the part that is fun about academia. And if there weren't certain people pushing me to go up, that's the way I would have gone down there to be with students. So I do fully intend to be closer to students as a president than I am now as a dean, actually, because my job now is even more external than I would think the president's job would be.
Thank you.
Hello again, my name is Sheila Brown. I'm a graduate student here at UNF. My question to you will be regarding your efforts to improve diversity and inclusion. I also received my undergrad from here, and from when I started, UNF has improved, slightly improved, but it has improved from when I started. I would say first is, it seems like from your last answer, is diversity and inclusion important to you? And after you view our diversity efforts, we have a commission on diversity. I think we're doing very well. What would you do to improve diversity and inclusion? What will be some steps that you would take for the university?
So, you know, this is a question that has come up several times already, and I'm going to start sounding like a broken record here, but it's very important to me. And it's important to me because, you know, I found myself in all kinds of situations as a student, as a graduate student, as a faculty, as an administrator. There's no question in my mind that fostering diversity and really getting people to be inclusive, to listen to other people's opinions, to understand other people's cultures, to really figure out a way how we work together as a society, not as one group or another. It benefits everybody. It benefits the university, it benefits our students, it benefits our faculty, it benefits our reputation, it benefits the people that hire our students, it benefits the community that we're trying to lead out there in terms of cultural change. It benefits the industry we're going to provide students with. It's a win-win-win-win-win situation. So how do you do that? Well, there's a lot of different things that we can do. First and foremost is to really try to become a diverse workforce, a diverse student body, diverse not just in race, but all sorts of other things. The other thing I think that's important is to really start talking about it more openly and be more open, tolerant, and understanding of other people, even though they may disagree with you. And I think you have some really good efforts ongoing in this institution. But really training in this whole arena, I think it's also something that we need to think about. We've started some efforts at K-State. We started within the college, and now the university has started taking over that program, and they're doing some training, at least for the administration. And I think soon that will penetrate to further down faculty, staff, and maybe hopefully students. But I think educating people about diversity and inclusion, about how do you become sensitized to this whole spectrum of intercultural understanding, it's extremely important. So I do intend to look very deeply into that, and I do intend to follow up with some of the things that you already are doing. But you know, some of the things I have in mind that may not work here. You know, I want to see what you think, what ideas you have. But I'm really ready to go when it comes to changing the diversity and inclusion of this institution and making it better.
Thank you. I do like the idea of engaging the community and having more open conversations about it. I do agree with that. I think that's a good idea for the university, especially students at this age, and or anybody actually. But I think that would be a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi again, John Biasotti. Last semester, UNF went through a couple of controversial events. There was a racist video that went out, and then there were Nazis on campus. I want to know what you would do if this kind of scenario were to happen again.
So this was what I was referring to earlier, because we had similar incidents at K-State. Ugly things. I mean, things that really shouldn't happen. But they do happen, and they may continue to happen. And I think what we need to do as a university community is to unify against such acts. One of the things we did at K-State is we brought the whole university together. It came from the president and the provost, and the word went out that time, that day, we're all going to collect right outside, we call it Anderson Hole, which is where the president's office is, and we're going to commit to diversity. We're going to commit to inclusion. We're going to commit to taking care of each other and being open. And we're going to commit that we're against such acts, barbaric acts. So that really brought the whole university together. But what I described earlier about the group of students, it happened afterwards. Because students came to me saying, is that enough? Is that all? So this is where I challenged them back, and I said, okay, I want you to tell me, what do you think we need to do? I had an idea, but I wasn't sure. And they organizing that forum, it was a great next step. And we're not going to stop there. We're going to continue. So bringing together what I thought it would be maybe 40 or 50 students, but it ended up being more than 200 students, and having a very open conversation about race, about sex, about sexuality, about discrimination, about all kinds of very difficult subjects. I had never seen anything like this. And because the students themselves organized it, it worked like clockwork. I mean, there were students up here facing the audience, and they were answering questions. I was there just to lend, my name and my influence, and I said a few words, but it's really what they said that made the difference. What the people out there, what they said that made the difference. I had people afterwards that walked up to me that said, I have been a K-Stater for 40 years. I never felt like this. Thank you. So it's a climate that you have to create slowly and surely. It's a culture that we have to create slowly and surely. And it's time that we did that across this country, particularly in institutions of higher education. If we don't lead that, who's going to lead it? If we, as really the places where leads thought and thoughtful change, if we don't lead that change, who's going to do it? So I hope I answer your question. Okay, thank you.
All right, are there any further questions that anyone would like to ask?
Hello, my name is Theo. So I think, forgive me if I don't word this right, but you said that at your department you grew like 3 to 4 times what it originally was while you were there. I was just wondering if you could describe some of the things, programs or initiatives that you've done that helped facilitate that growth.
So the 3 or 4 times was the growth at Penn State, a small department. And it took about 10, 12 years for that growth to materialize. So what did we do? We did a lot of things. First of all, I had to convince the faculty that our student numbers were going down. We looked at the same graph together, and we saw 10 years of consecutive drop, and I saw one thing and they saw something different. They try to convince me that this is part of regular ups and downs. Don't worry, next year we're going to go up, you'll see. Well, next year we didn't. So we finally said, okay, this is not working for me. We need to have a serious conversation about how we're going to change this, how we're going to do better recruiting, how are we going to do better programs for retention, how are we going to really work at a very different level to change this department. So one of the things that was very critical at the beginning, it was the faculty commitment. I now had commitment from the faculty and the staff that yes, this is what we need to do. So getting people to buy into that vision, if you like, is extremely important. If I hadn't done that, I couldn't have done it myself. Now, having agreement to do that, it's one thing. Hitting that target and actually make it happen is a very different thing. So then what we had to do is to really plan and tactically address how exactly we're going to do that. So we had all kinds of ideas, and we tried some, and some worked and some didn't. What ended up really working very well for us is that we targeted, and this has to do with the idiosyncrasy of that university. They had a cap on how many students they accept across the university. So for us to grow, we can't just go there and recruit students alone, because they could go to other departments, right? We had to figure out a way to cannibalize other departments, other programs. So we went out there and we marketed ourselves to, now this is the Department of Food Science, and for those of you that don't know what that means, it's a mixture of biology, chemistry, and engineering, physics, and nutrition. It's an odd thing, but it's a lot of science and a lot of engineering, all pertaining to taking raw materials and transforming those into foods that we consume, right? Starting with wheat and ending with bread, starting with grapes and ending with wine, starting with barley and ending with beer, starting with flour and raw meat and ending up with a pizza, and so on and so forth. So the point is that we went to chemistry and we recruited, we went to biology and we recruited. So we sort of did this internally, but we also had another recruitment that we did with specific high schools. So recruitment was extremely important to us. One of the things that became obvious as we were doing recruiting, though, and I was sitting back and I was watching how our faculty and staff sort of work with families that come in, the young men and women that they were interested, their parents, and so on and so forth. One of the things we were trying to sell, we're trying to market, it was the fact that we have really good placement. You know, you come here, we can guarantee you a job. And the more we play that up, now remember, this is almost 20 years ago now. This is 2000, 2002, 2003. So times were good. So we were selling jobs to the 17, 16, 18-year-olds, and they could care less. Their eyes glazed over. The parents were really interested. They wanted their son and their daughter to have a good job after education, but the kids themselves were not interested. So it wasn't really working. So we switched that. We started saying that, hey, do you know that our curriculum is very flexible? I mean, if you want to be a chemist, you can go be a chemist, but you can come here and still be a chemist. And you might change your mind. You may want to be a biologist, or you may want to be an engineer, or you may want to be a doctor. You know, we have a very strong pre-med program, for example. So we sold the flexibility of the curriculum, and all of a sudden the kids' eyes went up. So, and I can go on and on. There's a lot of different things that we did. But it also helped that we built a new facility. Brand new facility attracted a lot of attention. It also helped that we increased our research enterprise, and our reputation as a department became a lot bigger and better, and therefore more kids were interested, more parents were interested, more students were interested. And the fact that we can actually place everybody, although it wasn't important as they're coming in, it was extremely important as they were going out. So those are some of the things that we did. Now, we dedicated staff to that, and faculty took leadership. So it took a lot of hard work from a lot of people to get to that point. Now, a bigger college now at K-State, we increased over the last 5, 6 years by about 26, 27%. We had a program in place, and we continued that. I mean, we worked directly with high schools and some of the two-year local colleges that feed us students. You know, there's a lot of special events that we do to do that. We work very closely with the university's recruitment people. We're changing some things because we're finding out that some things work and some things don't work. But there's a lot of things that we can do. So did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Luis Poisson again, graduate student here at UNF. When you spoke about recruitment, it just popped up in my mind that I run a program on Wednesdays that involve local high schoolers and also alumni and people who are also even older than 25. And everyone comes together to play a specific game and compete every single Wednesday night. And something that popped up is that, you know, with these local high schoolers, they're here at UNF, they're developing connections, developing social relationships with everyone there. And a lot of them, you know, might be like 16, 17, they really now want to come to UNF, but maybe some of them, you know, they just did bad their freshman or sophomore year while in high school, and they've realized after talking to some of us who, you know, are currently in school or graduate students or alumni, they're like, wow, you know, I really messed up, I really want to change, and I really want to attend this institution because I like the community that I'm a part of. And so I'm wondering if you have any intentions to work with local high schools or local high school students that attend UNF regularly and have them have like a streamlined way for them to attend the university. Because I believe that for retention rates, I think that, you know, if you're already part of a club or activity or something that you belong to, you're more likely to probably stay at the university, and you're also more likely to succeed because you have other peers that are looking over you and keeping you in check. So I was just wondering your thoughts on that.
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of things I think we can do to attract those high schoolers that you're mentioning to come to UNF. Now, I understand that the criteria to enter into the university are pretty strict and fairly high up. And I've heard a lot of comments and a lot of complaints and a lot of issues around that topic. I have a suspicion that this pertains to metrics, the state system metrics, and we'll have to look into that. But what I can tell you is I've been in two different systems with completely different approach to things, and we can make things work no matter what the system is. For example, Penn State, very selective institution. The year I left Penn State, I think they had 125,000 applications for 7,500 freshman positions. Extremely selective. It was that year, it was harder to get into Penn State than to get into one of our Ivy League schools, the Harvards and the Yales. I had two boys that were getting ready to go into Penn State, and I didn't know if they're going to make it in. They were really good students in one of the best high schools in the country, and I wasn't sure they're going to make it in. They take the very top. So success in that school, it's, you know, success for students and success for teaching and learning and faculty, it's not that difficult. However, in the place I am now, at Kansas State, completely different philosophy. K-State is a public institution in a state that believes in educating everybody. So our criteria for people to enter, they're very, very little. If you finish from a high school in Kansas and you can read and write, you're welcome to K-State. Doesn't mean you're going to make it out, but you're welcome to enter. And there's something to be said about that philosophy, about giving everybody an opportunity, a chance. Now, this is probably somewhere in between. I think the limitations that you talked about are self-imposed. So we really have to take a look at how necessary are those limitations and how truthfully impactful they are in the quality of our students and the quality of our teaching and learning and training. There is a lot of ways to predict how good of a student will do, and SAT may not be the best predictor. The type of high school you finish, the quality of education at that high school, and your high school GPA might actually be a better predictor. We used the formula at Penn State that predicted the expected, we call it GPA as a college student, very, very closely with just a few inputs. And one of that is the ranking of the high school. The other one was the GPA. The other one was the types of classes that you took at your high school. So there's SAT, it's not necessarily the end all. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad student or a bad grade here or there. It doesn't make you a lesser student than somebody else that wasn't sick that day and performed better. So I'm very open to looking at that and changing that, but we have to stick to the changes that do not harm the well-being of the institution also. So I have to understand this whole thing a little better before we make any major decisions.
Thank you.
All right, so now we're going to wrap this up. The hour is just about done. But I would like to ask one question for Dr. Floros. So assuming that you were to become our next president, by the end of your tenure, what do you want UNF and UNF's graduates to be known for?
So this is an interesting question because it really forces a lot of things. And I know today a lot more about UNF than I did 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I try to do as much of my homework as I could, but you can only do so much by searching the web and getting information out of the web. I learned a lot of things during my visit last week and during the visit this week. But what I can tell you is that I still need a lot of learning to do before I can clearly articulate an intelligent answer to your question. Having said that, I do have an answer, and I'm going to try to articulate it as clearly as I can, but it may change as we move forward. What I believe this institution needs to be is what I told a few other of the groups. I think we need to be the driver for economic development in the region, in the city, and maybe even beyond this region. I think we need to be the driver of cultural change within this region and beyond. I believe we need to be the institution that the industry is looking for graduates and to hire people. I believe we need to address challenges that this region has, and there are quite a few of the challenges that exist in this region. We need to figure out a way to help Jacksonville, to help Northeast Florida, to help maybe the state and beyond address some of those challenges, some of those issues. I would like UNF to be known as the most impactful regional university there is. I would like UNF to be the place everybody knows around here. Right now, you're not very well known. I asked the question of the fellow that drove me down from the airport, the other day, and he knew UNF. He understood a lot of things because he lives very close by, and his son is interested in UNF. He's in high school and he wants to come, but he never received an invitation from UNF. I don't think UNF is well known throughout this region, and I think we need to make it better known. A lot of people have told me this is the best kept secret. Well, we don't want to be the best kept secret. I don't want to be the secret at all. We want to be right there in front of everybody. We want people to know that UNF is the place to be, not some of those other schools. So a driver for economic development, a driver for cultural change, a driver for a lot of the things out there in our communities, and really a place where it's known for first-class education and really strong innovation and research and solutions for challenges that exist around this area.
All right, thank you, Dr. Floros. And thank you again to everyone who attended. Thank you again to everyone that's listening to us through Spinnaker Media. Again, we have 2 more forums this week. We have one on Thursday and one on Friday. Same place, same time. So I would give a round of applause for Dr. Floros. And I would thank everyone else.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. And thank you all online.